Yeah, one of the questions I ask people I'm doing workshops is, hey guys, what do you think the number one source of confidence comes from? And people say, I've done this before, I've had this success, or your practice and how you train and prepare. And it's like, well, have you had success before, then show up in the moment and fail? Yes. Have you trained, practiced, and you're prepared, but you get to that performance and the moment's too big, you don't believe in yourself, and you don't do well in that moment. So those are important, but I go back to research from the BBC lab in the UK, Dr. Andrew Lane, 44,000 patients. They found that the number one driver of confidence and performance is self-talk. How you speak to yourself.
How you speak to yourself.
And then I'll take out a whiteboard and I'll say the brain thinks in 4 dimensions. The first dimensions are the words that we say. These words create pictures in our mind. And these pictures create that third dimension, which is our emotional state. And this emotional state, your cells have memory. It creates your belief system. And then the 2 questions I challenge anybody I'm working with is that thought true? Said by who? So if we can start at the top of this thought cascade and change the words we say to ourselves, the words we say out loud, and Charlie, how much more powerful is our internal language?
So we know from science and we know from research, we covered this morning, that our internal influence is 10 times more powerful than external influences. So what I think about me is 10 times more powerful than what you think about me. The problem is that if I don't know how to talk to myself, then my mind, which has a heavy bias towards negativity, is going to lie to me, and it's going to share with me a lot of things about me that don't serve me. And so how we talk to ourselves, I love that you put that on the top of the list for developing self-confidence, because the math is, if what I think of me is 10 times more powerful than what you think about me, and I'm not talking to myself and you are, 0 times 10 is 0. That means I have no influence over myself whatsoever. And if you're saying anything about me that I'm listening to, 1 times 10 is 10. And so, but no one ever taught me how to talk to myself. I used to listen to myself a lot, but no one ever taught to me how to speak to myself. So, and people are like, you asking me to, is that you asking me to trick my mind? It's like, no, I'm not asking you to trick your mind. I'm asking you to use your mind. And so when you're coaching somebody or training somebody who's facing adversity, challenge, and change, and they're in that spot of, I work with a lot of people, by the way, that are stuck. I work with a lot of people that are coming from substance abuse backgrounds or struggling with addiction. And so we've got a shame-based disease, where we've engaged in unhealthy behaviors. A lot of them have trauma backgrounds. So 85% of people with substance abuse have suffered from childhood trauma. And so they've got a bit of a negative narrative based on the way they've been behaving. So getting them to shift now and start to see themselves differently, it's not a subtle shift, And so when you're working with people, what are the few things that people can start to do to change that narrative and to improve the way they talk to themselves?
Well, the first one is just to master what I call RSA, radical self-acceptance. Have self-love, self-compassion, flaws and all. I think when I stuttered, I didn't like myself because I thought, dude, what's wrong with me? People think, I'm this, I have straight A's and I have friends, but like in these environments, I just would beat myself up. And one of the biggest shift I did prior to going to therapy, prior to going to speech therapy, then doing Toastmasters for 3 years, was I had to say, dude, I stutter sometimes. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I mean, it's just part of what has happened. I can't change what has happened. So it's this acceptance, but it's like, I'm going to commit to move forward and just love myself regardless. So it's just look at yourself. And most people, they wake up in the morning and they focus on everything that they don't have, all their flaws. So if we can just, hey, I love myself. I don't have to be perfect. It's just not the way it is. But if I mess up, it's okay. The world's not going to end. So I think number one is just to, as much as that may sound woo-woo, like there's some healing properties of just like, I'm going to decide and practice loving myself for who I am.
Yeah,
so that to me would be the foundation.
Yeah.
So therapy and be around people who support you, love you, and to maybe write down some strengths, things about yourself. Because I think sometimes we look at TikTok, Instagram, and we start comparing, and we say, I don't have that. We get FOMO, all this stuff, which is exhausting. So let's just train our mind to have that self-compassion, self-love. And then I'm going to give you some prompts to develop, to front load your thinking, and to have a pre-thought game plan, to pre-plan your thoughts. And I say, it begins before it begins. You lost a moment for the moment you started because you had no plan to get into that moment to really help yourself win that moment. And your language is going to be a huge driver of that. And I'm just speaking of experience as a former college athlete, 2 sports. When I was at my best, I had championship self-talk.
Champion self-talk?
So I had it, but I didn't know what that was. I was unconsciously competent. I didn't have any systems on this. So what I would do them is listeners, you want to train confidence. I'm going to give you 3 things you're going to write down now. We're in the mind gym. In the mind gym, we don't just think it, we ink it. The 3 most powerful words are we can say or write it down. Because the pen is mightier than the brain. Because the pen can remember stuff. We're going to forget stuff. So the first thing I'd have you do is when you need a boost of confidence is I want you to write down 3 times when you were really successful, when you accomplished something you're super proud of. The brain keeps a scoreboard of all of our failures. It keeps a scoreboard of all of our losses. It doesn't keep a scoreboard of when we've had success before. That success is just as real as that failure. But most people, when they go into a new environment, they think of, okay, I messed up before, don't screw up. I screwed up here. Like we have this bias for negativity. And then we go back to brain science. Charlie, teach the listeners, what % of human thoughts are negative?
80%, 85%?
Yeah, so 4 out of 5. And the research shows we say about 6,000 thoughts to about 70,000 thoughts. So let's do the math. If we're saying 50,000 thoughts a day, that's 40,000 negative thoughts. So I can't guarantee you that being positive always works, Charlie, but we know that negativity always works for the negative. So let's just give ourselves another option. So when you had success before, just remind yourself of those moments. And then to be credible with yourself, let's list some behaviors you're doing to earn the right to be confident with your habits and routines. So like Charlie, for example, you're about to do this podcast. Give me some times of when you've done a great podcast. You've had moments of success. Give me some examples of your training preparation. You've been working with me for 6 months. Dude, you can talk yourself into greatness or out of greatness.
Absolutely. And I think what you're getting, for people that are listening, it's you have eating habits. You have exercise habits. You have thought habits. You just don't know it. And I think, what I'm grateful for today is that, they say if you want to get up and go to the gym, lay your clothes out the night before. One of the things I do to focus on my prayer routine in the morning, people say, put your shoes under your bed, put your keys under your bed. So you start your day on your knees, before you can even go anywhere. It's like we have these little things, but what thought habits do you have? And, that mind is like a 2-year-old. I mean, it's going to whine, kick, and scream and focus on those negatives unless we give it something to think about. So thank you for encouraging our listeners to grab a piece of paper and to grab a pen and write down thoughts that serve you. And I love that you talk about, I think this is really important because there's the concept of toxic positivity, right? There's that kind of bullshitting ourselves, and what you're talking about is something I think is framed in authenticity, which is these are actual statements. You've had success. I think, one of the things you've always encouraged me to do, which I've translated into my coaching now, hunt the good things. What we focus on expands in our lives. Expectancy theory says you focus on good, you'll see more good. And so by writing down these 3 times that you've had success and then these 3 behaviors that allow you to build self-confidence, and then continuing to build reps in the mind gym is so transformative.
And then we're going to add one more. And I teach having what's called anchor statements. Think about a ship in the port, in the water. If there's no anchor, the wind, the waves, we call this the drift. You're going to drift away from the moment. You're not going to be present. You're going to be drifted off at sea. Maybe you go down to this negative thought pattern. So if we have some language, remember we think in 4 dimensions, listeners, words, pictures, emotions, beliefs. Words are tools. Words are tools. The words we speak and think are the wardrobe of our beliefs. So we can improve our words. #TBT, thoughts become things. So these anchor statements is just write down these 3 I am statements that are going to shape your self-image. We know from author James Clear, the number 1 driver of behaviors is identity. So if we can decide, think about, I used to love as a kid, we'd get this East Bay magazine, East Bay, to order like shoes and gear and all this stuff for the different seasons. This was before Amazon. So that East Bay magazine was like legit. We're so far every month we get new East Bay. And you could pick in that magazine what shoes you want, what shorts you want to wear, what socks or what hat you want to get. So listeners, I would say, Who do you want to be? Don't find yourself, create yourself. Pick words and actions that you want to be like. That when people say, yo, who's Heather? Heather, what words do you want people to think about you? We just threw Heather into the podcast.
Always.
You won't be able to hear me.
It's okay. I can tell listeners. I've had one word. When people think of Heather, what do you want them to think of?
Kind.
Okay, love that. So Heather is going to say, I am kind. You know, as her first pillar of this anchor, we become what we think about most of the time. So let's front load our thinking. Let's decide. Design beats willpower. And pick, I am this, I am this, I am this. And just have them pop up on your phone. Read them every day before you go into a performance. Because if you don't do this, you're going to be searching for comments. Your brain's going to find ways to stop you. Your brain's going to find ways to keep you playing it safe. So we have to influence. We call this your internal advertising campaign. And that's just going to give you a better chance. Quality thought equals quality movement. Negative thought equals negative movement. I'm not going to guarantee this is going to help you. This is going to guarantee a win, but it's going to give you a better chance.
It is, and it's that concept of, you know, having, I think, you know, what I've learned to call a performance mindset. You know, and a performance mindset is actually something that identifies and focuses on the done wells. You know, it gives credit where credit's due, and I think that's so important that we talk about that, because we are so apt to focus on our failures, and this is a thought strategy. You know, that everybody can use. And it's I like the concept of preloading. You know, it's like, I'm in charge of my thoughts. Well, if I'm in charge of them, what do I want them to be? And I can tell you that when asked that question, you know, when people think of me, what do I want them to think of? You know, that Heather popped up kind. I mean, most people that I speak with haven't thought about who they are or who they want to be. They think about what they want. You know, how many likes they want, how many followers they want, you know, what house they want to live in, you know, when. My friend Mike Diamond calls it destination disease. You know, when I get there, then I'll be happy. And we chase that to the point of always needing instead of always having. And we always can have. And when I say have, I don't mean all of those things. I mean, you can have the very best of peace of mind, of happiness, of serenity, of peace, of contentment, of fulfillment, based on healthy self-image and then a bunch of healthy self-behaviors.